Wait a minute, I'm going to try your formula. So what is it? 10 divided by 65 multiply by 500. Ah, okay. I was trying to trick you guys. You guys are too sharp, eh? All right. So 10 being the, Louisa just responded here. She says, take the 10, which is the coefficient for what is this first one? What is this? What is this cost center? ACCT, whatever that is. Take the coefficient, which is 10, and divide by 65. Where did you get the 65? The 65 should have been, if I'm not mistaken, the total amount of the conversion factors. Then you multiply by the amount that was posted. You guys are on fire, I must say. Right, that's good. Let me just close this one here. And yes, you can go back GL account, allocation, analytical allocations, and I can then, Louisa, this is just to answer you, then I can then choose to make amendments to this and make it 15 from now going forward, and then click on save. But of course, it's not going to change the previous, the transactions that's already posted, but going forward, if I use this one, it will post according to this. Let me have a look. And that should take care actually of our... Yeah, there we go. You're welcome. That should take care of our lesson 5. Are we still together? Let's see who's on here.
Just normal bread, not
Right, you can still hear me. That's a good thing. All right. Okay. So just before we go on a tea break, guys, maybe we'll take the, what is it now? 22:11. Let's see how much I can reach. Maybe by 10 to 11, we'll take that break. So just give me 12 minutes to go through the analytical budgets, and then we'll take a break. A 15 minutes break for tea. Let me just mute this line here. All right. Right. So we're going to talk about the budget. I think that's lesson 6. Right. The first part here, the production fixed assets stock journal. We've looked at the diagram yesterday that explained that all of these will post via a user-controlled interaction. You remember, only the other two post in real time. What was it? Your supplier documents and your customer documents, and unless if you do a direct journal, just like we did a few minutes ago. Going back to the top, you can define your budget according to your company or site. So your budget must be linked to one of the chart of accounts with dimensions. And remember, the analytical option has to be switched on your ledger to allow you to use budget. All right. Let me just scroll down here. And you remember the ledger? The analysis, budget, and commitments. Those 3, if you plan to use budget, very important. Those 3 check boxes must be ticked. If you forgot, let's have a look here. This is your, where did we find the ledger again? I think it was under organizational structure. So they're talking about analytical, your budget, and commitment. At the bare minimum, those are the ones that should be ticked if you plan to use your budget. The diagram below, okay, they've got a diagram here that shows you a typical process from when someone does an order request before it's converted to a purchase order. If assuming it's accepted, it can actually eat into the pre-commitment, and you can even look at the budget already at this line and drill down per line to see how much was allocated. Once it's approved, remember, when it's converted to a purchase order, it stops being a pre-commitment. It now becomes a commitment. And again, you can look at the budget to see how much of that has been consumed. Likewise, if you make a shipment request, especially those, what is it called, when you've got a contract and you can just issue out the shipments, the minute you do that, a commitment is done. Yeah, there we go. Actually, it's down here for contracts. And then you convert once you received your goods, you convert the document into a purchase order, and that becomes now an expense because now you received and you are now liable to pay the supplier. At anyone, the important thing that we're trying to point out is that at any one of these stage, guys, you're able to look at your budget line inquiry and have a look and see how much has been spent. Those who need a little bit more flexibility, please be aware that there's something called operational budgets that will be more beefed up than the basic one that you get here, right? If you look at the bottom here, you can define various examples. I think I will delve into them when we set up the screens. Let me just see if they do that. That's better. All right. So the first step into doing your budgets, I think, let me give you a mind map. You'll be I think that will help you a bit. So if I do like this is the first step. You'll do a budget structure. Then after you've defined your budget structure, you'd be able to define your budget entry transaction. And then you will do your, let me just scroll all the way down there. Okay, not that. Then you'll do the actual budget entry. So let me call it budget entry. And of course, I mean, you can have, if you want to pull a report or whatnot, which we're not going to do at this stage. So at the basic level, guys, there's a mind map I want to give you. So dealing with your budgets, you're going to have a budget structure, which will help you to define, if it's for annual, if it's sliding, against which chart of account. This is where you're going to do this. That's where you're going to define budget entry transaction. What do you think this will do? This word here, entry transaction, should be familiar by now. So this will control what we're going to see when we do a budget entry at a later stage. Which columns or fields will be available? What formulas will be made use of, and all those things. And once these two have been set up, you'd be able to do a budget entry. So let's just go back to that first step and have a look. Where is that? Did I go past it? There's no way. Oh, okay, there it is. Right. So this is the first step in defining your budgets. You can see here that, should I enlarge this a little bit? You can see that they've put in the budget code, the description, the short description. You will have to defined to X3 if it's for company or per site. You're going to put in your currency. The divisor usually is 1. Why would you want to change it? I don't know. Maybe when you do a budget entry at a later stage, you're putting in an annual amount, so you're going to put in 100,000. So the divisor here, you want to make it 12, so that whatever you put here, X3 knows that, oh, okay, that's for the whole year. So per period, you know, it would be the period would be 10,000. But usually you'll just leave it at 1. Okay, you got your accessibilities and whatnot. Operating budgets, again, that's I think it's an add-on. I think you have to pay extra for that one. If you look at the control type, what kind of control do you want to have on this budget? None. Is it per annual? Is it per period? Sliding, does it go across a couple of fiscal years, or is it accumulated? Accumulated, what does it refer to? Does it basically mean that if you haven't consumed all of the budget in a certain period, does it get carried over to the next? So all of these would prove, crucial to a company to select the correct option. Is it annual? Is it per period? Is it sliding? Sliding usually goes across a couple of fiscal years, or is it accumulated, right? You've got your budget miscellaneous operations. So if you're going to make adjustments, if you do the changes in your entry, should they also update your budget adjustments, or should it be manual? Or if you leave it as complete, you only have to do it once. Your adjustments will also be done together. These ones, guys, are very important. So important. Let's see. I hope they do an explanation down here. Oh, there we go. Let's see. Okay, I'm not going to explain the codes and the descriptions and whatnot, but if you look at the control type, when it's annual, that basically means your budget is controlled per fiscal year. Both your commitments and or pre-commitments are controlled so that they don't exceed your annual budget. If it's per period, quite straightforward. Same thing, but for per period. Sliding can be performed across several fiscal years. How will it know which fiscal years to take into account? Well, if you select this sliding here, for example, select also the fiscal years, the 2-3 fiscal years that the budget will be applicable for. Let's have a look, and they do tell you here validity start. Right. If you don't put the validity start, at the very least, put in the validity end date, and by default, X3 will take the creation date of the budget as the start date. So therefore, the end date will be compulsory if you don't put the start date. Accumulated, so this will be performed across performed across fiscal years, but if the budget has not been totally consumed in the past period, there's a leftover, it will be carried over to the next period. Very important that you get that. Let's have a look. I talked about the adjustments. So if usually you'd leave it on complete, but if you say manual, that means that you want the ability to go to budget adjustments and adjust it there independent from the budget entry. If you look at the bottom here, you can have your account. Oh, okay, yes, I didn't mention this. These two are also very important, your dimensions and your versions. So let me just go up here quickly. Tumeleng, I'll be with you just now. So charts. So when you define these budgets here, you're gonna have to also indicate against which which chart of accounts. I think in our example, obviously it will be TR1, and then the dimensions, the dimension type, you can also mention them here if you want. On the right-hand side, you can also mention the pyramid. I just want to show it to you quickly. Just give me a minute. Where's that option here? Our budgets are under, what is it, setup financials, and we should find all functions related to budget. So if I go to setup financials, everything here has got to do with budgets. The sequence, the mind map I've given you, you will also find it here. So if I go to setup, you start off with your budget, then your budget entry transaction, and then you will go to your financials to do the budget entry. But anyway, let me go to budgets here. I think this is the budget structure. I'm pretty sure it is. You know, they're not consistent with their names for some reason. Yeah, I was actually right. And you see what they said here. They said this is a budget structure, but you know, they name it differently. But anyway, so okay, there's your control type, your budget miscellaneous. You've got your currency, your divisor. If it's a company or site, which chart of account, then you can say if it's for TR1 or not. The dimensions, I can have up to how many dimensions? It should be 9 as per ledger. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So you can have up to 9 dimensions that you can utilize when you creating your budget. And again, you can select your pyramid. You remember the pyramid. So this gives you more reporting. Flexibility if you want to put it against the pyramids themselves. Once this is done, let me just go down here a little bit. All right, that was the budget miscellaneous. Oh, the version. Yes, the version. If you look down here, ladies and gentlemen, there is a version. So X3 allows you to maintain the same budget with different versions. So you can call it V1, V2, and then you can always indicate to X3 if you've got multiple versions, which one is the default one. Is it still open, the current version? Is it the final? Has it been finalized? Or is it the one that will be used by default? So these are the different. So I can have one budget with multiple versions, V1, V2, V3, and so forth. In fact, I think I can jump to it, or I can just come here and say now this is V2. This was I had the initial version. Now I've got another version, and then you can type it here. So I can have multiple versions for this one here. So what was the mind map? I have the budget structure, budget entry. So just give me a minute here. I just want to read this quickly.
There was some ice in the bread, so we put it in it. It's not that hard.
No problem. Right. Thanks so much.
Itumeleng, which options can we to allow? Let me just read that which option is used to notify the request that they have exceeded the budget but can still continue. So it will be up to the or should I say the business partner, whoever is configuring the system, within the parameters to indicate if the budget has been exceeded. Do they want to stop the user or the user groups, a group of users, or do they want to allow? Usually is per user level. Within the departments, we don't all have the same rights, so you'd want certain group of people to be blocked if they've exceeded the budget, and then to ask for for permission. The same way if you've got requests. You remember this diagram here at the top. If you've got what is RF request for, if you send a request and you capture it on X3, you certainly don't approve yourself. There must be someone else to approve to say that you are still within limits. Are you also going to show us? No, I'm only going to show you this example, guys. You can amend it to any what is it? To any entity or any department that you want to allocate it to, unless you've got an issue with that particular with that particular section where you're trying to apply the budget. Remember, when you do these exercises, I would only do, for example, I'll only do one journal, but I'm not going to show you one journal for depreciation, one journal for salaries, one journal for that. I'll just do the one exercise unless you've got a problem with a specific one that you're trying to do. Then you'll have to specifically tell me which one it is. Besides, if it's per department, you would use the dimensions. And then on your entry, on your budget entry, you would then indicate to X3. I'm referring to you, Itumeleng. Then you would indicate to X3 that the budget that you're setting up, is it either per GL or is it against a certain dimension? And if it's dimension, so that would be a certain dimension type and dimension values. So if you look at this one here, let me see on this screenshot, for example. So if I use the dimension type here, and this CCT was a department, in my budget entry, when I get to this level here, I can say this will be based on the dimension values. So when I do the budget entry, this allows me to capture the budget against the individual departments, the dimension values. So this is to answer your question that how to allocate the budget per department. But just wait until maybe if I go to the next steps, you'd be able to see what I'm talking about. So I'm going to go down here. Oh, we left 2 minutes before we go to thing. All right. The budget entry itself looks like this. So this is the screen, right? So okay, let me just move these out of the way. Right. So why do we use this? So this will, the transaction types created determine the entry detail, the filter elements, the column displayed. So this is very similar to the entry transaction that you created or that we looked at earlier on. I think one page is another example on the journal side. What are they doing here? So you're going to put in the transaction, the description, if you are using dimensions, the maximum number of dimensions that will be that can be used when someone is using this screen or the entry transaction. The budget category, this is for you, Itumeleng. Then you will indicate to X3, are you going to use it per account or per dimension or per period? So in your case, then you can put it per dimension. Obviously, it has to be active preloading. What does preloading mean? It means if someone does a budget entry, do you want the GL account range to be preloaded? Or do you have to put it in? I'd rather you leave preloaded always ticked. Now, this is the screen. You're designing to the user. You say, if someone does a budget entry and uses this particular one, I want the person to see these columns: amount budget, actual amount, amount committed, amount pre-committed, and total actual. You just click on the drop down. Depending on the column you selected, you will just match the column to the content. The line, the 1-1 basically means that this has refers to the first budget. Why? Because in the same screen, I can capture two budgets or more. So if I go to line number 6, I can repeat all these lines. I can have amount, budget, actual amount, but my line will be 2222, which means that has got to do with budget number 2. Do I want the total amount? Yes or no? So if someone uses this entry transaction and the column amount budget shows up, I want the total calculated and displayed, yes. These other ones, maybe you don't want to see them. Why would someone say, I don't want to see them? Is because maybe you want to use them as part of the formula as calculation. So actually here, a person might actually just see two columns, amount and budget. Why? Because they said no, they don't want to see this. But the reason they included these ones is because the total actual makes use of column 2. What are they doing here? They're adding C2, C3, and C4. Oh, so your total actual will be actual amount. That makes sense, including all the amount committed and all the amount pre-committed. So that will be the total actual. So whoever uses this screen, that's what they will see. For you, Itumeleng, this is what I was talking about. You will put it against your dimensions. I wonder if they explain these columns. The total actual is calculated by a formula that adds columns 2, 3, 4 together. Yes, that's why you saw C2 plus C3 plus C4. Oh, yeah, here's an example of where they use multiple, what do you call it, more than one budget at the same time. You see, even to avoid confusion, they added B1 in the title already, so you know that the first 3 lines have got to do with the first budget, line 1, they displaying the columns, and they only adding these 2. The budget difference would be between the actual amount minus or less the budget that was given. And the same thing here, but that's for budget number 2. I hope this makes sense and you can understand what they talking about. Let's see what is that. Oh, okay, you can set up your budget weighting codes as well. So for example, I don't know, maybe you're gonna have a distribution, and maybe if you put in 100,000, you remember this amount here? Let me take out the 10,000. So maybe, you know that per season, if Coke was doing this, they would put a higher conversion rate here by when is it summertime here? November, December, Jan, spring, all those. But for your June, July, May, August, they don't anticipate to sell that much. So they would put lower coefficients and higher ones during summer. And if someone then puts in 100,000, where's my thing? 100,000, it will just simply distribute according to the coefficients here. Very similar to what we've done under the journal. Sorry. What happened? No. Let me go up. Just give me 1 minute. I know it's 4 minutes over the break, and then now you're ready to do the budget entry itself. And then where do you go for the budget entry anyway? Do they even tell us? Let's have a look down here. Where do they do that? I forgot where it should be under financials. Oh, sorry, there it is. Financials, budgets, to enter the budget. And then, of course, then this will pop up with your entry transactions. You will select the transactions that you had previously selected. You'd put in the criteria, the company. Most of these will default anyway. The period start and end you can put in. From account, you can see here that this person here used from account. It must be that on the entry transaction they use the account as opposed to dimensions. So for you, Itumeleng, yours will enable you to choose the dimension here at the top. And because we selected preloaded, the minute you go next, or when you're done with that, the next screen appears, and this is where you do the actual capturing of the data, right? So it comes up with your chart of accounts. There are I think that's the sales revenue, and then you would put in against the dimensions. Well, this is a perfect example for you, Itumeleng. So you can see here that against that one GL account, they've got different dimensions, and they put in dimension, budget amount against the dimension. If it was a GL account, you'd have a GL account appearing here. On the left-hand side, you would have 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, and I'll put the amounts, the budget amount against the GL account. So the entry transaction really dictates a lot on how you're going to be doing the capturing. I want us to take a break. It's now 7 minutes past. When we come back, we're only left with commitment. They talk about the budget. You can do a budget copy. And then they talk about reports. And then we'll be able to do our exercises. All right, so I'm going to put the time on the computer here. Where is that thing there? Is this the one that I used? All right. Edit. Let's have a look. How many minutes? 15 minutes. Done. Right. Let's meet back here after 15 minutes.